Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We have another episode today, and I am so excited because this is a place that is dear to my heart and a place that I know very well, where I was born and raised. But I said to myself, you know what? I am somebody who curbs biases, and I cannot really present on a place that is dear to my heart and I know it well. Let other people tell us about this place, and that is the Kingdom of Morocco, located Northwest Africa. And we just want to know everything about it. My name is Mona with Mona Lu International, and I work with organizations looking to enhance their culture competence, cultural mastery, uh, to increase sales, productivity, build better teams, and also have a harmonious workplace. So let's dive in. Good afternoon to my guests. I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves and tell us where they are right now and whether they lived in Morocco and for how long. So, I mean, it's all yours. Go ahead. Where do we start? Let's start with Alizia. Go ahead.
Hey, Mona, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. Thank you for arranging this whole thing and inviting us to talk about Morocco. So my name is Alizia Gonzalez. I have been living in Morocco on and off since 2018. I'm the CEO and writer of Alizia Wanders, which is based in California. We're a creative agency, so we do marketing, video, vlogs, and copywriting. So I do the photography and the artwork too that you see in any of those videos.
Very good. Glad to have you. How
Thank you.
about Kate?
Hi, my name is Katie. I am the owner and creative director of Atelier Kate, which is a sustainable design brand. So I focus on creating fashion and interior design. And I also have a podcast called 10 Hours from Home, and it's completely unrelated to my business. It's just about like my adventures of living abroad. And I lived in Morocco pre-pandemic for 3 years, and I lived between Casablanca and Paris because of my business. My business is based in France, and I ended up in Morocco because I was living in France and I went to Morocco on vacation, and it was about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I heard the first call to prayer, and there were all these stars in the sky, and it was like sun in the morning, and I was like, this is what I want. I'm tired of the gray. So I was there for
Oh,
3 years, and I've missed it ever since I left. So
well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Glad to have you here. And also, we are going to learn a lot from you. Go ahead and please
Yes.
tell us about yourself and how long you've been in Morocco, and we'll go from there.
Okay. My name is Brooke, and I've lived in Morocco for about 7 years now. I moved here with my husband, who's Moroccan. We lived in the States for 10 years before that, and just decided to come for 1 year, and then we never left. It's been 7 years now. So we're currently building a house, so we're not leaving. I used to work as an English teacher here. And when I had my second son, who's 2 now, I left and I haven't gone back to work yet. Maybe when he's in school full time, I'll go back.
Awesome. Awesome. Glad to have you as well. So let's start with this. Well, obviously, Kate, you told us you just went to Morocco for whatever many days and you said this is it, right? So let's go back to you. Why Morocco? What was the impression the first time, and what drew you to the place? Let's start with that. Let's go to Alizia.
Okay, well, in 2018, I was in I'm a painter. So I came to Morocco before my creative agency as a painter. I found out about an artist residency in Tetouan, Morocco, which is in the north. And I was there at a residency run by some Americans, and it was to study the stories and culture of Morocco and then to make paintings out of them. So my project involved meeting with a lot of people, and that's when I learned how important that was going to be in the paintings that I was going to do. So off the bat, I had to start socializing with people, building relationships. I really only started painting at the end. Most of the work I learned after the project was based on building relationships with people and creating cultural understanding. That was the only way it would work. And after that experience, I kind of, I was visually, I found Morocco to be like no other place in the world. And ever since 2018, I'd come back for different reasons since then.
Wow. Wow. I like what you just said. No other place in the world. Can you elaborate on that? As far
Sure.
as what exactly, because the viewer and the listeners, whoever is watching us would say, okay, so what's so much special about this place?
Sure. And I think Morocco in particular, you would see a lot of saturated colors, complementary colors, and they're done in a way that's so uh, uh, it's intuitive to people. I think people understand colors and art intuitively because they've grown up around a lot of master craftsmen, a lot of handmade items, and it's just an intuitive thing to them. And I find it to be very different than places in Asia or in Europe or in the States, for that matter. And I think that saturation of color plus a lot of friendly people who want to show you those beautiful things, culture, language, crafts. It makes it a very unique place. Aside from that, I think the language, the array of languages in Morocco is just unparalleled because most people are polyglots. So it turns out only 3% of people in the entire world speak more than 3 languages. So Morocco must be very unique in that sense that most people are in that 3% in the entire world.
Wow, that's awesome. And you just said, you mentioned that you went there, obviously, with your work, you had to start building relationship. And you did mention how probably how easy is it to build a relationship with the people there? Um, can you tell us about how approachable are people? How welcoming are people? What are your experiences?
Well, being the first time I came to Morocco, I didn't know what to expect. Like most people, I was like, okay, this is totally new. How do I dress? How do I talk to people? What language should I speak? All that. So as soon as I got there, I actually came in a hijab because I didn't know.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's a
so
misconception, right? That
yes.
people have. Okay.
Actually, I read it in Lonely Planet. So I was reading Lonely Planet guides and I was like, okay, what should I do? And I wore hijab and I booked a stay with the host family in Tetuan instead of staying in a rebad by myself. I felt like that would be a good way to learn about people, families, Moroccan life. And as soon as I got there, they were like, your last name is Gonzalez. I'm like, yeah. They're like, so are you Muslim? And I'm like, no. They're like, you don't really have to wear a hijab. And I was like, okay. So I like took it off. And that was when I started feeling comfortable. I was like, okay, like they're it felt like human, right? Because I was reading these things from Lonely Planet, things that I don't know, maybe didn't really apply to a real life situation. So that's when I started bridging the gap between what I thought of Morocco and what Morocco really was.
Mhm. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
All right, Brooke, you have a different experience. You were married to a Moroccan and you were living here and you went there. So tell us, the same question will apply. And we'd like to hear from you because you have a different experience.
Well, the first time I came to Morocco was back in 2007. And we used to come every year to see our family here. And I always felt really distant from them because I didn't, I couldn't speak the language. So my husband was always translating between, and I would just spend a little bit of time and then leave. So it was actually me that was pushing to move here. I wanted to spend a year here, try to learn a little bit of the language and try to be able to form a relationship mainly with my mother-in-law. So we came for that 1 year and then we both, my husband was convinced I was going to hate it. He told me, you're making a huge mistake, but okay, I'll humor you. So we came and we both really loved it and we haven't left. So I do still struggle with Darija. I don't think I'm fluent by any means, but I can do everything independently by myself. And, I can speak to the doctor in Darija and the police or whoever I need.
Wow.
But it's difficult. There are times when I don't understand something and there's a lot of laughing and, they use whatever language they have to help me and I use whatever I have. And somehow we understand each other. Moroccans are miraculous. They can understand so many languages. I can throw an English word and French accent in the middle of understand. It's incredible. So it's the people here are just very open-minded, I think, and kind of weird. They just like carry on as if nothing happened. I feel self-conscious, but then I feel like they don't even notice. So then I'm not self-conscious anymore, which I think is a great thing that made it easier for me to adapt. Stick like a sore thumb and that's okay, but I do feel like in a way it's like a positive thing. Every time I get in a taxi, sorry, the taxi driver is like, oh my god, you speak Darija, like let me call my mom, and he wants his mom to like show me on the FaceTime and have me say something to his mom. They want to invite you over for tea and stuff. So I think they just really appreciate that you take the time, even if you just know a few words, if you take the time to speak to them in Darija, or especially if you know some words in like Amazigh, Tashel Heights, something like that, and you say some words, oh, they're just over the moon that you took that time to learn something about their culture, they love that. And I don't know, I just feel they have this deep love for Morocco and they want to share it with you. So I'm sure my husband, he also has this really deep love for his country, and he came here and he started building businesses. He owns 4 businesses here now. And he just said, let's create jobs here. They need them. Let's keep our money here. Let's invest in the economy here because, it's his blood and he loves it.
Very good. Very good. That's a good, unique experience that you have. And we wanted to hear it from you. And I'm glad that he decided to open businesses, which we'll get to it in a few minutes. But let's go to Kate. We'll have the same question. Just tell us the first impression. You went there, and then all of a sudden you are here, and this is a place that you felt good at. I mean, I would love to hear it from you. So go ahead.
Yeah. So I was living in Paris for 7 years before I had come to Morocco. I was in Barcelona for a year before that. And since I moved to Barcelona, I had a friend who had gone to the desert and done the whole like sleeping in the desert thing. And I just thought that was so cool. And like for those 8 years, I had been trying to like get to the desert and sleep in the desert and in Morocco. And I met a friend in Paris who is Moroccan, and he said, hey, come like anytime, I'll show you around. So I was like, okay. And I just jumped on the opportunity. And we went to Marrakesh, but my first impression was like when I got off the airplane, he picked me up, which I didn't have to fight with the taxis and do all that stuff. And we were driving from Mohammed VI to Casablanca, and there were all these people just sitting in the fields, like doing nothing, just enjoying. And I was like, what is this? I don't understand. Like, how can people just sit in the fields? Because coming from Paris, it's, it's always going. And so I just thought it was so cool that people were just like, hey, having a nap, just chilling, And then I was really upset because he took me to McDonald's because we were supposed to meet his friends. So I was like, I don't want to be the American that like gets off the plane and goes to McDonald's. It's not like who I've ever been in traveling. So my first experience was McDonald's in Morocco. And then he made up for it because we had Camel after. But I think that the first impression for me was because I had gone to Casablanca, it wasn't really what I imagined Morocco to be. Like, I think when you think of Morocco, you think of Marrakesh or Fez or like the more traditional cities. And so I was kind of blown away by like how cosmopolitan it was at first. And then we started kind of venturing out. And that's when I think I fell more in love with Morocco, like as we got further away from Casablanca, because it just is so, people are so inviting, and especially when, I mean, in the city too, but once you get out of the city, it's just such a different feel, like any place. But yeah, just the people and the food and the call to prayer, like that's really what sealed the deal for me. It was like, I had an amazing dinner, and then I heard the call to prayer, and there were about 7 million stars in the sky. And I was just like, I can't go back to gray Paris. Like, this is, people are nice here. The food is amazing. Like, I just want to stay.
Well, good. Hopefully you'll get the chance to go back there. So let's go to this, because there is a set of questions to make it easy on people. But because I am obviously I was born there and know the culture very well, I would ask this question. A lot of times we, as Moroccans, we get confused with people from the Middle East. And people think that we have the same culture. And we keep telling them, listen, it is absolutely nowhere to be near. There may have been some influences throughout history and so on and so forth, but definitely the cultures are quite distant. Cultures are quite different. And you have to use different ways, different methods to get acquainted with the daily lives of people and understand the culture. If somebody, like, let's say anyone can pick on this question, but let's say somebody tells you, well, they're Arabs, Middle Eastern, what would you say?
So can I jump in?
Sure.
So when I first moved to Morocco, I had gone back to California, which is where I'm from. And my best friend was having one of those LuLaRoe parties.
Uh-huh.
And all the girls were like, oh my gosh, you live in Morocco. And like, aren't you afraid all the time? And I was like, no, why would I be? And they're like, oh, because of the Arabs, because of the Middle Eastern people. Like, and so I think that the way I handled it, at least, I said, you know, for me, like, it's, when I walk around Morocco, like there's these Arab men that are sitting together eating ice cream. Like that's the vision that I have of Morocco. And like, I've never met a place where people are nicer and kinder and more open-minded and like loving and accepting of everyone. And anyway, so that was my experience with that kind of prejudice, and I mean hateful prejudice too, not just just the confusion.
Just be open. We want to make sure that we're opening up and we're letting things be said, and we don't have any taboo in here. We want the people to get as close as possible. That way we can wash out and clear up any misunderstanding or misconceptions that people have and get them closer to those from different part of the world. And that's the main aim and objective of this. So please, by all means, go ahead and share your heart out and tell us what it is. Anyone,
I think
talk to us.
One thing I would say is that people often confuse Islam with the culture of the people who live in Muslim majority countries. We can talk about Indonesia, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and those people are Muslim, but their culture is so different from one another. A Saudi has a very different culture than an Algerian, an Egyptian, a Palestinian, and people think, oh, they're Muslim, they're all the same. And that is a huge misconception. And I think Morocco falls in that trap because they just get lumped in with not only Arabs, which most Moroccans are not even Arab. So there's that, you know, they're Amazigh or Berber or whatever you want to say. Some are Arab, yes, some identify as Arab. And there's so many mixed cultures here. My husband's family has a lot of Moorish or Spanish blood in them. You have the French, you know, they were colonized by the Romans and the Arabs and the French and the Spanish. So you have a lot of cultures that came here, a lot of different peoples that came here, which I think has created a place where people are open-minded because they've always been surrounded by different people. You know, they welcomed the Jews. They're very open. We have churches here in Casablanca. We have synagogues, we have mosques. It's all okay. Nobody cares, you know? So I think, first of all, you need to separate the religion from the culture. Even within Morocco, you have people who practice Islam differently. And you have, you know, a Fezi family is not the same as a family from Dakhla or Marrakesh or Wajda. They're very different. They have different traditions, they have different foods, and they have different ways of expressing their culture, and even different ways perhaps of practicing Islam.
Very good point. Very good point. How about you, Alicia?
Those are some really interesting points. Just to piggyback off of that, I think that's what gives Morocco a nice mystery about it, really. If you look into Morocco, since the 8th century, they were kind of built on a seafaring empire. So you had a lot of people traveling to different places of Morocco, through the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean, and of course through the Middle East, Central Asia, and all parts of the world, really. So it kind of adds to the mystique of Morocco, in my opinion. I see it as a myth to be debunked by a challenging traveler or entrepreneur, because once you kind of dive into that and you get to see like all the nuances and flavors of Morocco, you see that they're like any other human being on earth, where, you know, we have beliefs, we have values, we have attitudes, we have needs. And I think that's where cross-cultural exchange is really important, especially if you want to do collaboration, shared work. And there are a lot of unique and high quality products in Morocco, and a lot of really cutting edge ideas that are worth exploring once you get into the mystery of Morocco. So I see it more of an invitation and a challenge to the traveler. And yeah.
Very good. Very good. You wanted to add something, Katie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, to Brooke's point, I think a lot of times too that Islam is made out to be a religion that, like, at its roots and at its practitioners at their core are not. And I think that what I've noticed being back in the US for a little bit is that it's really hard for me to watch kind of war movies, because every time you hear the call to prayer, it's also associated with some kind of, you know, heinous thing. And I think that when you come from a culture that has that ingrained in its brain, a lot of times it's hard for people to really like look past that and understand what Islam is at its core, which is actually a really beautiful religion. And so I think when you hear like Muslim majority country or something like that, you automatically associate those kind of images with, if you're not familiar with, like Alizia said, like having that cultural exchange and really like going outside of your comfort zone and like connecting with the people there. I think that, yeah, like you're going to have that block, and it's really like, it's always really sad to me. So anyway, I just wanted to.
Oh, that's so nice. And thank you so much for that, because it's extremely important to clear that up and share this with our viewers and audience, because if you don't take time to understand the other, how can you really build a relationship? How can you work with them? How can you appreciate what they have to offer? And how can you learn? You cannot learn anything. So let's go to communication. How expressive are Moroccans? Katie's laughing. I mean, is it easy for them to express their feelings?
Yes, they're passionate people, I would say. There's a lot of passion in the Moroccans. I actually find it really funny, because a lot of times, like, you'll see these explosive arguments, like in traffic usually, and these men are getting out and they're screaming at each other and they're inches from their face and they're yelling and they're hurling insults about each other's moms. And then it's over, they hug, they say goodbye, they walk away, they go their separate ways. And you're thinking, oh my God, someone's gonna die here, you know. They let it all out and then it's okay, you know. And I've seen this so many times, and to my husband it's like a normal thing, but for me it's very odd still to this day. And he's like, yeah, you know, you say what you have to say, you express what you need to express, and then you move on with your day, you know. So for me, I was a bit horrified, but now I'm kind of used to it, you know, especially in Casablanca, it happens all the time. But I have noticed it. There's like a temper, like a flair. I call it a passion because it's a positive word. But I think it comes from a place of honesty, you know, just expressing what you need to express and not like hiding your emotions or hiding your feelings. So I don't know if I unfortunately have found it hard to become close friends with Moroccan women. I find them hard to crack. I find them very mistrusting. They're always telling me like, don't trust people. If people are nice to you, it's because they want something from you. I've heard this many times from Moroccan women. So I find their culture is a bit mistrusting, especially of the outsider, the Berania. You know, there's always like an ulterior motive. They think I have one, or they tell me, you know, don't trust people because other people might have this ulterior motive. So I have found it hard to crack into them and to like form very close friendships with people that are not part of my family. So I don't know if this is something that other Moroccan women would feel, that there's like, that they're a bit hot-headed and have these tempers and that they're passionate. But that's how I feel like looking in from the outside.
Very good. Good point. Okay. Next, Katie, you were smiling.
Yeah, I second everything Brooke just said. I will say though, what I've noticed is that they will explode on like a random stranger in the street, but no one ever yells or does like, you know, cry. I've never seen in the Moroccan family that has adopted me, who I call my Moroccan family. I've never seen them have a conflict. Like I've never seen them explode at each other, like, or cry with each other.
I have.
Okay. I was going to say, maybe it's just the family that I've interacted with. I've seen them explode at other people, but I've never seen them like have this volatile moment between each other. So maybe it's just that family, but but yeah, I will second what Brooke said. And I think it's worse during Ramadan because everyone's like tired and hungry and cranky. I never see more like explosive moments than during Ramadan.
The worst, yeah.
How about Alizia?
I agree with the point that they are very expressive, and I think it does come from a place of honesty, and they try to get down to the truth of the matter and try to clear up any kind of confusion. One example I can give you is I remember being on an airplane back from Morocco not too long ago to the States, and we were headed into New York, and the plane was filled with Moroccan people. And it took us an extra 20 minutes to board the plane because everyone wanted to clarify and negotiate where their seats were. And it took us an extra hour to land. But during the flight, we were getting food and stuff. And the Moroccan guy next to me looks and he's like, "What is this?" He's like, "What is this?" And he starts talking to the flight attendants, and he's like, "This is nothing. This is nothing. Like, what bread, what," compared to the food in Morocco, of course, it was, plain food. But they were so social. So also the TVs weren't working. And so he questions maybe 8 people around him. He's like, "Is your TV also not working?" And they're like, "Yeah, my TV's not working either." He's like, "We should say something about this. We should talk to the captains of the plane and tell them that the TVs aren't working." And like 8 people were like, "My TVs aren't working." So I feel like it always comes from like expression and trying to get down to like, hey, what's really going on? And I feel like that is something in particular I wish we did more in the States. I do. I came back and I had like some reverse cultural shock. And I found like, yeah, it's comfortable in California in particular, but I wish that we also had that passion to find out, hey, like what's going on around here? Can we talk to each other a little bit more, especially during the pandemic, I mean, I'm sure this is an evergreen topic, but even maybe after, we just don't have that same sense of like getting information from each other directly. And I'm not so sure why that is, but that's definitely something I wish that we could learn more from Morocco.
Okay. Talking about directness and how direct, because obviously cultures, they fall into direct, indirect. How did you find your communication with Moroccans as far as, okay, it is what it is, and you just mentioned how expressive they are, but I know for a fact, because I am originally from there, that people, they try to save face. They would not come to you and tell you, hey, what you did is wrong. So they take time waiting for you to take the initiative and tell them that you were wrong, or you may never hear that. So how direct are they on their communication style.
Yeah, I don't think they're direct. I think you like, at least professionally in the US, I feel like we go directly from A to B. And I feel like Moroccans like to zigzag all the way until they get there. And there's a lot of like posturing, and I don't know if it's I don't even know how to say it. I'm forgetting English, like Schwab. Like they have to be polite in a way, like they can't directly say it to you or it'll be considered rude, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like I may have invented this term, but I feel like there's this Hashuma culture where no one wants to be like shameful, you know? And there's this culture of like not ever letting any shame come to you. And so I feel like their communication is kind of colored by that as well. Especially when I was working here, I found like no one would ever just directly say like, you need to do more of this and less of that. Like that never happened. I was always like, they were like dropping little clues or little hints or like making like comments to other people within earshot or like, and so you kind of have to piece together what they want you to do, or you have to directly go up to them and be like, do you want me to do this? Yes or no? And even then, sometimes you don't get a straight answer, you know? They'll say, well, in the past, other people did this. And I'm like, great. What do you want me to do now in the present? You know, and they're not good about saying that. And I don't know where that comes from, especially because I was in my position, like a younger person. And it wasn't even like, maybe there was an age thing and a younger person didn't feel comfortable telling an older person what to do. It wasn't even like that. I don't know where it came from. They had more experience than me. They were older than me. Like, they should have been comfortable telling me what to do, and they were not. So I had to pin it on the culture. And for me, I'm American. I'm very used to like, hey, let's do this, this, and this. You do that, you do that. This is what our goal is. How are we going to get there? You know, and going fast, like, let's move. Whereas here, it's like, take your time, talk a whole lot, don't be direct. So professionally, I found it difficult to work here. Very difficult. Because I didn't know what was expected of me.
Has that created conflicts to you at work? The way of the communication, the directness of
sometimes it has, because I almost felt like some things were shady, almost like they were withholding things from you. If you ever wanted to negotiate things, like talk about your salary and stuff like that, it became like we'll talk about that later. Like they weren't comfortable talking about a lot of things that to me are just normal everyday conversations that you have at work, but it became a weird, uncomfortable thing for them. So I wouldn't say it caused a conflict, but for me, I was like maybe putting my foot in my mouth because I'm too direct, you know, and making them uncomfortable. So I kind of had to step back and be like, wow, maybe I need to, you know, take another approach here because this isn't working.
have you, obviously the question would be, have you found a better way to address issues after understanding that there is a Shuma culture?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, I straight up tell people, hey, I'm American. I'm used to working in the US. This is how we did things. So I'm going to do it my way. And if you're not comfortable with it, I need you to tell me.
Got it.
You know, and I need you to not worry about my feelings or about what I'm going to think about you. I just need you to be honest with me because I do not understand your subtle hidden clues. You have to just tell me. And I promise you, I won't get upset. I will appreciate you for that. I just straight up say it because I don't know how to do the dance. I don't know how to play the game. I'm too old to learn. So I just need you to tell me what's up.
Good, good. How about you, Katie?
I mean, I've done business in Morocco for probably about 4 years now. And I would say that like the communication has definitely caused issues in terms of like business practices. I remember I was teaching actually at a university, like English, but with an entrepreneurship, like business culture kind of situation. When I first got there, just to kind of meet people, and a friend of mine was working for the school and said, hey, we need somebody to teach this class. And I was like, cool. And so in those interactions, it was a lot of, I would second what Brooke says. Like, I feel like Moroccans are more direct with each other, but when it comes to foreigners, it's hard to kind of bridge that. I feel like they want to, like she said, like they don't want to have a shameful image of Morocco, and like they're very proud of, this open, like kind, warm persona. And that's true. It's not a persona, but they're proud of that kind of like association. And I think that sometimes when they work with, I mean, and I don't know if this is true for Moroccan to Moroccan interactions, but at least what I've found is like when I work with my artisans equally as when I was working in the school, people wouldn't communicate things that like were problems that I needed to address that like would affect my bottom line. So, I mean, even as recently as a couple months ago, I had a social media manager who was an ex-student of mine, and she had just created her company, and I wanted to, I needed a social media person, and she was offering this service. And so I was like, I'm going to take a chance on your company. And I had to put things on pause because like the results that we were getting weren't exactly what we wanted. And there was like a hack in my business. It was a whole thing. And I said, like, we just need to like take a pause. We'll come back to this at the beginning of the year. And she literally ghosted me. Like I haven't heard from her since. And so like and I've had that happen with my artisans. I've had that happen when they didn't renew my teaching contract. Like they didn't let me know. They just sent me, I got an email from the new English teacher, like the new business teacher, asking me for any tips. It was just like, it's this very odd, like, I don't want to have a bad impression, but it leaves a worse impression, if that makes sense. So that lack of communicating, like, it's not going to hurt my feelings if you don't want me back as a teacher. That's fine. I know my students loved me. I was probably just too expensive or whatever the case may be, but like communicate that to me. Like professionalism would dictate just, like, hey, let me know before I get a random email from a random person that you've passed my email to, that like, this is what's happening. Or, like if you don't want to work together anymore, or like I upset you by putting things on pause, just let me know. Like we can work through it. It's fine. Like I'm not going to get upset. And, so the communication, that part of it has definitely been a struggle in terms of like my business. I haven't had those same issues in terms of relationships. I've always had people who in the beginning, I think there was a little bit of like a hard time finding my way with, like Brooke said, female friendships. But I kind of found my area in that. And so I think in terms of friendships, once you get there, it's fine once you have that kind of conversation. But yeah, in a professional setting, it's definitely a hurdle.
I hear you. And I can tell you this, Brooke, before we, Katie, before we go to Alizia, it is among Moroccans as well. Okay. It's not just, that's not something that is happening with foreigners. It's just a culture falls into the category of collective cultures. Safe face is better than going out there directly to the person and telling him how you feel. They will leave you clues, okay? Just like Brooke said, they will give you clues and you have to figure out what's going on. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not work. And I would agree that a little bit more of communication in the professional world, especially with others that not understanding the particulars of the culture, will be very helpful. So Alizia, what would you say about this point?
Yeah, totally. I agree with a lot of those things. Picking up cues is really important, and humor. I think humor will go really far in Morocco.
Yes.
So to go back, it was a little hard for me at first to establish relationships, but once I found a network of people through my art and people who can help me get around, and some female friends in unlikely places. One in particular is I was buying a fridge from somebody on Avito, and we became friends. And this was significant because first it was like a female friend that was Moroccan. She spoke a lot of different languages, English included, but from her and a lot of other people that I've met, just being able to observe how they do business, I was able to pick up cues just watching them. I'm like, okay, so we're not as direct as they are in the States. Like, if you try to sell something, the price is not going to be the first thing they're going to talk about, right? They're going to talk about, hey, how are you? We have greetings. There's formalities that I had to observe. And I'm like, okay, now I understand like the formalities. Now I understand like building relationships with people, sitting down with them, having tea, having cookies, and talking about the project. I might have to come back for 3 days to talk about a business proposal with somebody, and they want to know that, hey, this is kind of serious, I can trust you. And then we talk about it, maybe even for a week, and then maybe the next week we might talk about prices, and even then we might negotiate the week after. So it takes a while, but there's something to be learned there, and I learned it through watching Moroccans do business with each other. And then I try to kind of pick up on those cues and have a sense of humor. And it's made me grow as a business person. And it helps me in the States as well.
Very good. Talking about formalities, how formal are people? Whether I know in the daily life, I mean, I know how it is. Hey, how are you? Give me a hug. All of that. But how formal from someone, an outsider, I would say, although Brooke is local now, how formal are they?
I find them compared to the way I grew up. And again, it's hard for me to even speak as an American because within the United States, we have different cultures, and a person from the deep South is very different than a person from New York City or from the Bible Belt. So I don't want to speak for them all, but I find Moroccans, the ones that I interact with, which are mostly from Fez and Meknes, I find them to be very formal, and I find them to have quite rigid social rules and social etiquette that you need to follow. And if you don't follow it, then hashuma alik, because it's very rigid and very formal. So for me, I'm not used to that. I come from a more casual environment, a more casual family. So for me, that was a bit of a shock too. And I have to really before family events and weddings and things like that, I have to turn on my Moroccan Brooke and be ready to do what I need to do and make a good impression, because I don't want to be the crazy American girl who doesn't get it. So I have to remember and be on my game.
So basically there are formalities or etiquette that you have to follow. It's just okay, whatever, I can do whatever I want at any time I want. It just does not work that way. You have to be respectful of the etiquette and the process of that etiquette.
Yes, there is a process. There's a way to do it. Yes. And it's something that you really have to learn, and you can learn it by observing. You can ask questions. I'm very tell me what I need to do. I will learn, but I need you to tell me. I'm not going to pick up subtly on the social cues. Just let me know. Luckily, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, when I first moved here, they're both fluent in English, and they both lived in the United States as well. So they kind of understood where I'm coming from, and they were able to help me. But I've definitely made some huge cultural faux pas that have caused big problems in the family. So I have learned my lesson many times over, but I'm sure if my mother-in-law or something was dropped in Ohio, she would make some cultural faux pas too. Absolutely. So I try to just, be forgiving with myself.
Yeah. Talking about, let's go to Katie. I would say the same way as far as formalities and etiquette.
Yeah, I mean, to second Brooke, I grew up in not the deep South, but I grew up outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So I was born in California, but I grew up there, and my roots are there. And I would say it's pretty similar, in terms of formality, and just what I've noticed is that it's kind of like an onion. So when you're in, for example, my little Moroccan family, when we're in that kind of nuclear family, it's a very different level of formality. And then when you start to expand into the grandparents and the uncles and the aunts, there's the different levels of what's acceptable. And I think it's just a generational thing, but I didn't find that as much of a barrier personally. I fit into that schema very well because of just the background that I have. And and that formality that we do have in the South, and like, you know, that that kind of like upbringing. And so but it is, yeah, I've noticed like there's small things that I noticed when I first was introduced to this family. And one time I took a taxi by myself from work to have couscous. And my friend was like, why did you tell them that like you didn't come with me? That's like a horrible thing. Like just those, I'm like, we're in family. Like, who cares if like you didn't bring me? Like I can take a taxi from work. It's not that big of a deal. And like, just to know that that like brought shame on him, because like, it's, you know, how dare you let this woman like take the taxi by herself? And, you know, like you should have picked her up. And anyway, so it was like a whole, there was still a learning curve, even if I had sort of a higher level of, you know, that kind of formal interaction within a family or interaction from day to day. But I will say that like on a business level, it's a lot less formal than I'm used to, because I'm used to France. That's kind of where I have my business background, more or less. I started working in the US, but like only for a couple of years before moving to Spain and France. And France is a lot more formal in terms of like those business interactions. And like Eliza was saying, you know, there is a lot of like, how are you? How's your mom? Like, you know, conversations, tea, couscous, meals, and like getting to know each other before the actual business starts. Whereas like in France or the US, it's like, I'm here to do this one thing and we're just going to do it and execute, and that's it. I mean, France, it takes a little bit more than that, but you know, in the US, it's definitely like, you know, I know you for business. If we become friends, that's great. But like, that's not the objective. The objective is to execute this thing that we're doing together. So I would say in business, it's a lot less formal. And in like everyday personal interactions, it's more formal when you're in certain situations. Like within friends, I don't feel like it's, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, from what we're getting, Alicia can add to what we've been saying here. But as far as formalities, and there is a place and there is a time for formalities in Morocco, and then among friends and all of that, there is a level of etiquette that you got to follow. But for business, you have to build relationship. Just like any collective culture, relationship is so important. And don't go in and say, hey, I'm here to do this. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So they need to know you. They need to know that they can trust you before they do business with you. So Alicia, can you add, you have something to add on to this?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think there's a sense of formality. In my experience, I feel like it is in all layers of Moroccan society, and I would put an umbrella over it as everyone has a desire to be great. I feel like that's something that spans across all humanity. And once we realize that, we say, you know, even with my friend, giving them praise from time to time for what they did and honest appreciation, that will later build the ground if you want to have an honest conversation, because you build that respect for each other as friends or as business relationships grow. If it takes you a year or less, if you have that in mind, I feel like that basic formal structure will get you far in Morocco and probably other places as well.
Okay, now let's move on. I know time is coming up, but we want to end it on a few good notes here. And I would say do's and don'ts. Something, let's say, when don't do that at all. It's gonna create some trouble. You'll be in trouble. Don't do that. So anything that comes to mind?
I will say one mistake that I was making a lot when I first moved here is I would make eye contact with everyone that I crossed, because in America you do that. You make eye contact and you smile. You subconsciously do it. And here it can get you into trouble because it can be read as an invitation and super flirtatious. I had to unlearn that.
Okay.
Because that was getting me into trouble.
All right. Eye contact. Be careful of that. Next.
My dues would be like, absolutely do the big holidays. Like what my favorite holiday is Eid Likbir, and like do at least a couple days of Ramadan just to get the experience. I think do learn at least a few words of Darija just out of respect. I think that those things, like, I mean, that's why I have such a deep and profound relationship with my Moroccan family. I mean, I had the advantage of speaking French too. So, but I think those are my dues. Like, do eat the food, do experience the culture, like in its purest form with the amazing people that are there, because those relationships last
I was
forever.
gonna say, sorry, go ahead, Kate.
No, it's fine. I was that's it. I mean, my Moroccan family, like my Moroccan mom texts me every day. Like, so I just think, like, do make the effort and do those things, because you're only gonna benefit and eat great food and meet great people from doing those things.
Awesome. Alizia.
I have one do, one don't. Definitely make that initiative, go out there, meet people however way you can. It will eventually lead you somewhere. If you're surfing, if you're going to cultural events, if you're learning languages, if you're just buying stuff, meet people. The don'ts. I think once you're invited to a big dinner or something, and they've got a nice carpet on the floor, take your shoes off or wear some slippers. Don't put your outdoor shoes on the carpet.
Very good point. That's really important. I do this here at home too. I'll tell everybody, leave your shoes outside. Here is, we have slippers for the inside. It's just out of respect to the holiness of your home, and that we don't see that a lot here in the United States. Now, one thing as far as hospitality, how would you rate it?
10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Most hospitable people. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
100%. I would say 3 words to describe a Moroccan. 3 words to describe
a Moroccan or Morocco.
We are dealing with people. Give us 3 words that will help us have clues.
Okay. I would say passionate, friendly, and it's not a word, but deeply rooted in their culture.
Okay. All right. Next.
Let Alizia go first.
Okay. I would say beautiful, dynamic, and ancient.
Very nice. Very deep.
Now, maybe I should have gone first. I would say open, caring, and incredibly thoughtful. Very
nice. Now I am going to, all of this, I really enjoyed what I've been hearing, and I wanted to hear it for somebody else, because I can sit and talk about a culture that I came from all day long, and then I wouldn't be given probably I would miss some things, and I wouldn't be given credit to other things, and also it wouldn't be as objective as it can be. One thing that we are going to end with right now, anybody that is listening to us, watching us, what advice would you give them if they're planning to travel, do business, or if they've never heard of Morocco, or if they heard of it and say, what will I, you're asking me to go to Morocco, what will I experience? I'm not so much interested. So go ahead. And include, I'll let you think, but then include business opportunities as well. Because I know for a fact, if you know what you're doing, it is the place to be as far as opportunities.
Yes.
So go ahead.
I will say, we when we moved here, we had 3 businesses in the United States that they're still open, but we came here and we had them managed by someone else. And we started opening businesses here, and the opportunities here just they exploded. I think Morocco has a beautiful future ahead of her. I feel like in the United States, like the good days, no offense, are behind her. In Morocco, they're ahead of her. So if you have a good idea and you come here with an open mind, and I think you have to forget everything that you think you know about Morocco. If you've never been here, just forget it, because you're wrong. Come with an open mind and just ask a lot of questions. I find the best way to learn about people is to not make assumptions and not to think that I know something that I don't know. And it's just to ask, because especially with Moroccan, they're very open, and I feel like they want to share their culture with you. They want to help you understand. So if you just ask and you genuinely express your desire to know, they will tell you what's up.
Thank you. Next. Who's next?
Yeah, sure. Morocco is an emerging market. There's a lot of investment in real estate. There's a lot of investment in marketing. There's a lot of investment in technologies and some export of agriculture. So if you're in any of those industries or something that I didn't mention, it's definitely worth checking out. If you don't, you're missing out. You're totally missing out on a whole new market, a whole new culture, a whole new vibe. I definitely feel like it's the place to be, along with other destinations, but definitely a place you don't want to miss out on.
Katie?
I mean, I would just add to that and say, I think a lot of the conversation about Morocco does involve tech and agriculture and those kind of métiers, but I would include fashion in that, to be very honest. They're a massive supplier for places like Zara and Louis Vuitton and things like that. But beyond that, there's incredible talent in Morocco that doesn't really get the voice or the light that they deserve. And they don't always have the ability to go to Europe, because I find that because the arts aren't as, I don't want to say valued, but just, people don't put as much importance on them in terms of like earning a living. And they forget that like fashion is a $300 billion industry, or arts and all of that. So, but in terms of, I always advocate fashion in Morocco, because I've seen so many young, talented designers that either can't pursue what they're doing and have to get a quote, quote, real job, or they have to go to Europe and then, then Paris or London or whoever gets credit for this, this amazing artist who has actually come from a different place in the world. But in terms of advice, I would say, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. And I would say that collectively across the world. I mean, that's a lesson I had to learn in France when I first started working there. And I do have to remind myself constantly, is like, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong. And it's so, and to like continue on that, like understanding, like I said, those nuances of like building the relationships in the way that you would build relationships in Morocco has only served me to grow my business in the US, and will only serve me when I finally get back to Morocco and in all of my other interactions. So like taking what really works for you and applying that into your own daily doings.
Oh my, what an awesome, I mean, all of these that I've heard, they're touching and very great statements. And I know what the country has to offer. And I do agree with you, Kate. It doesn't get that level of interest or promotion or advertising or whatever you want to call it. It does not get what it deserves. And there is a mine in there. If only people open up and start asking questions and being curious and go out and experience it. I'm so appreciative of what you've been sharing, also sharing your time. And I'm going to say something. I lied. I told you it's going to be the end, but there was something else. There was something else. We are all women in here, but we didn't mention anything about women in Morocco, the role of women in Morocco. A lot of times people, they have this idea of, oh, well, they're oppressed, they're this, they're that. And I'm like, really? Well, go back and check history again. There is always, in every culture, throughout history, there are what we call dark moments. But those dark moments, they don't last for long. If we go back and look at history and look at the potential and the highly educated women, talented, we would say, oh, hold on, I'm changing my mind real quick. I know you said you don't have a lot of interaction, Brooke, with a lot of women, but obviously you are living there, you're noticing what's going on, and you can have clues. Obviously, same thing applies in every country. There are places where you will have openness, and there's other place where it's so conservative, and since it's a culture of really huge and important family ties, it's a very, very difficult, sometimes it's challenging to understand. But from your observation, what would you say? Women oppressed, not oppressed, educated, talented? What do you say?
Talented, absolutely. I think even the human potential here in Morocco, people are so smart. Like Alizia said, people speak a lot of languages. They are very emotionally intelligent. So I think the human potential here, like as far as if you wanted to start a business that, you know, capitalizes on human potential, this would be a great place. Are women oppressed? Some are, yeah. You know, I think there are some women here who have very tragic stories, and you know, the woman who works for us, who is my beloved home helper, she was married off when she was 15 years old and had a child at 16, and she has a really sad story. And she's 24 right now. This didn't happen decades ago. It just happened, you know. Do I think all women are oppressed? No. Every one of my doctor, my dentist, my orthodontist, my pediatrician, they're all women. These are highly educated, extremely talented, smart, intelligent women. The businesses that I have, the schools that I've worked for, they're all owned by Moroccan women. They're run by Moroccan women. The teachers are highly talented, passionate Moroccan women. So I was teaching English for a company called Locus, and the director of Sahem, she's a woman. I mean, this is a high-powered, highly paid person, and it's a woman, a Moroccan woman. So I think that we have both ends of the spectrum here. And I think it depends where you are, and it depends on the family. The culture here is so diverse and so varied. You really cannot speak about Moroccans in general. You can, but you're going to fall into a trap because it's just so different. And the experiences that people have here are very, very, very different.
Great. Either Katie or Alizia, who wants to go first on that subject?
Yeah, concerning Moroccan women, I liked the metaphor that Katie used earlier when she said it was like an onion, right? Like some things about Moroccan society were like an onion. And so I felt making friendships with Moroccan women was like an onion. I was reaching in from the outside. It took me a while, but I really had to join activities like learning languages, or I would buy stuff from a Moroccan woman and really try to create friendships, professional ones as well. And even going to the hammam and trying to practice the rija.
Oh my God.
That took me really far, and it took me a year to get to that. And I was like, oh my God, like if I just went there and like talked to people, like that would have, so it was like an onion. And don't be frustrated. It will happen. It will come. Just be patient, be persistent, be understanding, open-minded. It will happen. It just takes time.
Okay, so as women leadership, you've seen women everywhere leading.
Yeah, definitely.
Correct, Alicia. Okay, Katie.
Yeah. Educated, incredibly intelligent. Like Alizia said, everyone speaks multiple languages, woman or man. Like my taxi cab drivers speak more languages than the average American that I meet on the street these days. And as far as oppressed, I think, like Brooke said, it's more of, I think you have all the opportunities that you could possibly have, but sometimes they're more reserved for people who come from middle to upper class. Right. So it's more of a, like anywhere in the world, it's more of an advantage when you have that kind of, when your parents have traveled, or when, you have access to other cultures and other ways of doing things, for any person in any country, I think that you see things in a different way and have more of an opportunity to become educated and become that empowered woman. But I will say that even, I mean, from what I've seen, and I've been in Casablanca, that's the majority of my experience, but I work with women artisans, and they run their cooperatives. Like, in the beginning, I found male artisans, and I will say that the female artisans are on time, they're on budget, they work their butts off. They have families that they also are taking care of full time. So I think no one gets things done more, whether you're educated or from a rural area or whatever your circumstances. I think no one gets more things done than a Moroccan woman. And I've just really enjoyed like those relationships and seeing the women that I work with and the women that help me create my things. I've enjoyed getting to interact with them and getting to know them. And even though they're not educated, a lot of them don't have, like a lot of them before they joined this cooperative, they were illiterate, or like they were just working in the home and incredibly, and struggling financially. And I've just seen how they blossom when they've been given the opportunity to do so. And just from their own traditional techniques and know-how and skill set. I think that that's not everybody's experience, but I think that given the opportunity, like it's only an opportunity to shine, and they take it and they run with it. And I've just seen some incredible stuff and been very grateful to have participated.
Thank you. I mean, I wish we had all day to sit and talk, and we had because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss at a deeper level, but perhaps we will leave that at another time or for another time. I am so thankful and so appreciative of your time. I know we have a mother that her son was sick, but she still accepted to join us and share her insight. We have you, Katie, we have you, Alicia, that took from your time to share your experiences in Morocco and be honest about those experiences. So I'm so thankful. Hopefully we'll get to work on another project. Again, probably we'll do something about France, Katie.
Yeah, happily. I mean, I'll have a lot more to say. I think, not like, think I would be a lot less positive about the things I have to say about France, to be perfectly honest, but it's been an experience.
We'll do that one day. Let's stay connected, and also let's reach out to people to understand who they are and extend that hand of appreciation, warmth, sympathy, empathy, and everything that separate us from other species and other beings. So let's stay connected and let's spread the word of tolerance, peace, and love for everyone. I'm so thankful, and I wish you a very, very happy afternoon.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.